A lot of the time you might hear people talking about protein this and protein that. Well, if you want to burn fat or gain muscle, then how important is it really that you get enough protein, but also the right kinds of protein? Well, if you imagine that you were building a house, then not having enough protein would be like not having enough wood and concrete and glass to actually build the house, right? So it's pretty friggin' important. But what happens when it comes to burning fat and building muscle? Well, in that case, protein is even more important. That's why in this video, you're gonna learn the answers to these 3 questions. Why do I need protein when I'm losing fat? How much protein do I actually need? Or even better, how much protein is optimal? And where can I get this protein? Or even better, what are some of the best, most high quality and natural sources of protein on the planet? So let's start with question number 1. Why do you need protein when losing fat? Well, there's 2 main reasons. The first reason is that protein preserves muscle. Now you might be wondering, why would I want to preserve my muscle? Well, there's a bunch of really good reasons. Number 1, muscle looks better. If you have a look at people who lose a bunch of fat without preserving muscle, they tend to look kind of skinny and weak as opposed to, defined and toned. Your muscle also burns energy 24/7, so it enables you to eat more food while still looking great. And also, preserving your muscle typically means preserving your strength and power, which is important because a bunch of studies have shown that when these things go down, you're more likely to fall over and get injured and fracture your bones and so on. So as you can see, preserving muscle is important. But how does protein actually preserve your muscle? Well, to answer that question, we need to know a little bit about protein and the basic fact that if you're not getting enough protein, your body starts to cannibalize itself, right? It starts to literally eat itself. And I know that sounds a little bit dramatic, so let's go back and explain it using the house metaphor. So imagine that your body's a house and that the bricks that make up this house represent protein. Now, your brick house, unfortunately, is constantly in need of repair. Why? Because the wind and the rain and the storms of life and so on are constantly battering at it and wearing it down in the same way that your daily stresses and the daily things that we do in life wear down and batter down our individual cells that make up our bodies. Now, this isn't really a problem so long as you have an extra supply of fresh bricks that you can use to repair the damage, right? So for your cells, it's not really a problem as long as you have excess protein that your cells can use to repair the damage to the cells. But what happens when your supply of fresh bricks gets too low? Like, what happens when you start running out of protein? Well, if one day a storm breaks down the front wall of your brick house so that it's exposed to the rain and water's gushing in, then your body's gonna say, hang on, we really need to repair this wall here. We need some bricks. And it's gonna get those bricks, even if it means ripping apart the kitchen, for example. In the same way with our bodies, if we've got a problem with some of the cells in the wall of one of our veins or arteries or something like that, and our body says, hey, we've got a problem right here, we need to patch this up, and I don't have enough protein or you don't have enough protein, then our body's gonna say, that's all right, let's just go to the bicep or some other area where we have stored protein, and it's gonna literally harvest it from there and transport it over here and then patch it up and make the repairs there. So put simply, when you don't consume enough protein, you basically force your body to self-cannibalize its own muscle stores. Now, if you're doing any kind of exercise, that's all wear and tear on your body that's breaking and ripping apart cells and causing all kinds of damage. And that damage needs to be repaired with protein. So you can imagine how important it is to make sure that you're getting the right amount of protein so that you're not self-cannibalizing yourself and destroying your existing muscle mass. So that's reason number 1. Eating protein preserves your muscle, and that's good because it helps us lose more fat and less muscle. But what's the second reason why protein's good when losing fat? The second reason is that protein has a satiating effect, which is basically a fancy way of saying that eating protein makes you feel fuller in your gut, right, in your belly for longer, which means that you're less likely to overeat and then gain fat, and that you're more likely to eat less and therefore lose fat. And this filling effect is the secret behind the Atkins diet. Now, I'm not saying that you should do the Atkins diet or that it's good. In fact, some people say it's really bad. But the truth is that it did help a whole bunch of people lose fat more effectively, basically because it's a high protein diet, right? So the Atkins diet essentially says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it essentially says, protein's good, eat as much as you want. Carbohydrate is bad. Don't eat it, or eat like 20 grams of it or hardly any of it. By the way, that's just one of those eat this, don't eat that diets that I talk about in this video that you can check out because it's pretty useful to understand that stuff. But long story short, it did actually help people lose fat because of the satiating effect of protein. So people who were on this diet when they were usually eating this much beforehand, by changing and just eating a lot more protein and less carbohydrate, on average, most people ate less, and by eating less, they lost fat. So it's pretty simple, but that's basically how it works. And that's why the satiating effect of protein is really important when you want to lose fat. So if you want to burn fat and you want to preserve muscle, eat enough protein, right? And that leads us to the next question of, well, how much protein do I need? How much protein should I eat? Now, there's a difference between how much protein do you need and how much protein is optimal. How much protein do you need means like, how much do you need to survive versus how much is optimal for the most fast, rapid progress. I'm more interested in that, so we're going to answer that question. So what's the answer? Well, the quick and dirty answer is 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, why do I say quick and dirty? Well, the reason why I say that is because there's basically a bunch of different recommendations, according to the research, depending upon whether you just want to lose fat and preserve muscle versus whether you're a strength athlete or whether you're an endurance athlete, and then also whether you're an elderly person or not. So as you can see, there are some slight differences, but based upon the research, if you eat 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, chances are you're going to be fine. Okay, so how do you then calculate your daily protein? Well, if you weighed 90 kilograms, then you'd multiply 90 by 1.5, which would give you 135 grams of protein per day. Now, of course, if you use pounds instead of kilograms, you're going to have to convert by dividing your pounds by 2.2. So for example, if you weighed 200 pounds, then you divide by 2.2, which would give you 90.91 kilograms. And then you can just multiply by 1.5 to find out how much protein you should eat per day. Now, of course, you don't have to eat this much protein. You can eat much less and you'll still survive. This is just a smart thing to do if you want to get in the best shape possible as quickly as possible. And that leads us to the next obvious question, which is, what are some of the highest quality and most natural sources of protein on the planet? Well, the best sources are natural proteins that are also complete proteins. Now, you might be wondering, yeah, I get what he means by natural, but what does he mean by complete protein? And why should I care about that? Basically, if you, me, or anyone else on the planet doesn't get what's called the 9 essential amino acids, then we'll die, which is kind of inconvenient. But fortunately, there are foods that contain all of these 9 essential amino acids and also in the right quantities that our bodies need to survive. And these foods are called complete proteins. So what are some examples of complete and natural proteins? Well, there's things like fish, be it salmon, tuna, cod, snapper, and so on. Dairy, such as milk, cheese, yogurt, etc. White meats, such as chicken and turkey. And then red meats, such as beef and lamb and even kangaroo. And yes, Australians do eat kangaroo, even though it's featured on the Australian coat of arms. Now, you may have noticed that complete and natural proteins tend to come from animals, which isn't very convenient for vegetarians who don't eat animals. So what do vegetarians do? Well, they basically make sure that they're getting these 9 essential amino acids by combining different types of vegetables and nuts and so on. But I'm not going to go into that any deeper in this video because basically it's a whole nother topic. Well, what about protein powders? Well, some protein powders genuinely are really high quality sources of complete protein, but they're not natural. They're highly processed, right? They're powdered